how did the church in China grow so big? Especially since it's a communist nation, right? I mean, we're seeing the world's largest revival in a country that persecutes believers. I mean, we have estimates of about 30,000 believers coming to Christ every single day. Even if we're exaggerating that, and it's half that, that's still 15,000 people coming to Christ every single day. How does that happen? Conservative estimates are the church in China is probably less than 140 million believers, but we would say that there's between 140 to 170 million believers. In a country that is run by the Communist Party, that requires atheism as a mandatory part of becoming a member of the Communist Party. It's not a Christian country, at least not yet. And yet they're seeing all these people come to Christ. What is their method? What is their strategy? What is their technique? I often get this question, and there's no straightforward answer. However, a couple of days ago, I met together with a pastor who shared his testimony that I think in many ways reveals exactly what has been happening inside of China for years and has transformed the nation forever. You see, I met with this pastor. We had this secret meeting a couple days ago. And when we met together, I wanted to hear his story. I've known this pastor for a while. He was with China Gospel Fellowship. If you're not familiar with China Gospel Fellowship, you can actually look it up online. Current estimates are that one church alone has over 10 million believers. So, I mean, that is a phenomenal number, especially for a church with no website, no Facebook page, no social media, no marketing team. 10 million believers. There's countries that don't have that many people. And yet he has that in his church. And for those of you that are familiar, I wrote a book called Kidnapped by a Cult, where it's the biography of Pastor Shin's life. Pastor Shin being one of the founders of the China Gospel Fellowship. For 2 years, I followed him around and talked with him about all of the different elements of his story to tease out the details of his testimony to share with the world. That's available now. That's Kidnapped by a Cult. But Pastor Shin, the former pastor, has stepped back a little bit in not retirement, but definitely taking things slower as he gets older. And this new pastor that I've met several times before, but never really got his testimony until now. And he told me, you know, Eugene, when I was 15 years old, I was struck by this disease that completely paralyzed me from the neck down. And in fact, my neck became swollen, my airways became closed, and the only way that I was able to survive was the doctor had to slit a hole in my throat. Now, this was during the 1970s, so this was not a place that used a lot of anesthesia. This was not a place that used, the most sterile medical practices. This was a rural village, probably a barefoot doctor. If you're not familiar with barefoot doctors, when China first took over, they attacked the educated class. And among those educated class members were doctors, and they believed that everybody has the right to medical care. So they forced all of the doctors to leave the buildings that they, tried to collect fees from and just send them out to the people to serve the people for free. And this led to the term called barefoot doctors, where many of the doctors then went uneducated. They were quite poor. And the medical practices in China just progressively got worse and worse and worse. And so it's probably a barefoot doctor that performed that emergency surgery on him. As he laid there in his bed, hoping to get better, nothing changed. He laid and tried to get up, withering in pain, day and night, suffering and misery. He began to pray for death. He said, Eugene, I prayed that someone would simply just kill me, that maybe I could just cover up the hole in my neck and cut off my air passage so that I would suffer at least for a few more minutes, and then die, and then the suffering would be over. But little did he know that his next door neighbors were two twin daughters. They were older ladies. They had been sold by their mother years prior because the mother was trying to survive during the Cultural Revolution when food was scarce and people were dying by the millions of starvation. And this woman, in order to survive, sold her only two twin daughters. And they were now in this village, living in a house that shared a wall right next door to this young man who was bedridden. The mother became a believer. How? We're not sure. But once she became a believer, she had this frantic desire to go and find her daughters, to share with them about Jesus. She may not have been able to raise them. She may not have been able to provide for them. She may not have been able to feed them when they were with her. But if she could provide to them the words of life from the life giver that would give them eternal salvation, she wanted to do it. So she walked hundreds of miles looking for her daughter until she finally arrived in this village where she was able to share the gospel. And while she was sharing the gospel with her two daughters, they told their mother about this young boy who was dying in the house next to them. So the mother goes over, she meets with my friend, and she tells him about Jesus, and she tells him that Jesus has the power to heal him. He became a believer from her testimony. She didn't have a Bible. She didn't have any Bible training at all. She only had her testimony of what God did in her life, and she shared it with him. She told him that if he would fast for 2 weeks, God would heal his body. He laughed. He said, "Heal me? I'm already on death's door. I'm knocking right now at death's door, about to cross over the threshold. How in the world can me not eating for 2 weeks heal me?" But he listened to her. She seemed to know what she was talking about. So he fasted and prayed together with her. She fasted for him for 2 weeks. After 1 week, he could feel his body healing. After 2 weeks, he was able to get up again and walk around, and his body was healed. He said not long after that, a man that was close to 80 years old, who was a believer, arrived in his village and was preaching the good news. And he said, "Eugene, I went to the world's shortest Bible school." He got training from this guy for 3 days. For 3 days, he got Bible training. And then he was given as a graduation present a Bible, but it wasn't a full Bible. It was part of the Bible. It was missing Matthew, it was missing Revelation. It was only pages from the Bible because a whole Bible was almost impossible to come by. So what the Christians often did was take portions of the Bible and divide it up among each other. And in the year 1979, his very first year of preaching the gospel, he said he planted so many churches that he lost count. After 1 year, he was able to start 200 centers for teaching ministers and evangelists to preach the good news. 200. That's in addition to the churches that were planted during that time. That was the beginning of China Gospel Fellowship that continued to grow. And when I sat down with him, I asked him how much has changed. He looked at me and he said, "As I see China today, the persecution is still going on. The church still has to make a firm decision whether to follow Christ or to avoid persecution by denying him. And those that follow are true, passionate believers that abandon everything for the sake of the gospel. And we're still seeing that today. And that's still contributing to the growth that we have in China." So if you're asking, how does the church in China grow to be so big? That is one testimony that says how it's happened. I want to thank you so much for joining me for another Back to Jerusalem podcast. Again, I'm Eugene Bach, your host for this time, coming to you live on delay from somewhere within the borders of China. God bless.